The big story, of course, continues to be Venezuela, although now Greenland is kind of, finding its way into the story as well. But to deal with this Venezuelan situation, we were all stunned, I guess, to wake up on the weekend and see that the U.S. had, in fact, managed to get Nicolas Maduro and his wife out of Venezuela. And then to hear Donald Trump talk about the fact, and this is something that just struck me as, I don't know, so obvious at the time, in his press conference, because he announced this at Mar-a-Lago, he mentioned the word oil, literally counted 20 times in that conversation when asked about the U.S., actions here, what this means. It was oil, just everywhere. Now, since that time, we've also learned, actually this story I think just broke this morning, that the U.S. has apparently brokered some kind of a deal with the Venezuelans where X number of millions of barrels a day will in fact end up going to the U.S. But the bigger concern here from a Canadian perspective is, wait a sec, we're an oil-producing country here, one of the biggest in the world. What will this do? How will this potentially negatively affect our industry here? So I thought we'd try to get some perspective here. Julian Karaguesian, as I said, served in the Canadian Ministry of Finance at the Embassy in Washington as well, working on the Canada-U.S. economic relationship. He's now a professor of economics at McGill. Julian, welcome back. It's always great having you here.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
So there's a lot at play here. Let me begin by asking for your reaction to this story, and again, to this part about oil being the central issue. Is that what's going on here in your estimation, or is this a smokescreen?
I think oil's part of it, maybe not so much to have the oil, but certainly to control it. But I think it's part of a bigger picture where, at the end of November, the Trump White House released their new national security strategy, and in it, they're suggesting quite strongly, it's amazingly frank actually, that their focus is going to be increasingly the Americas. And so the removal of Venezuela's leader, Maduro, is in part, I think maybe in large part, or at least in significant part, a signal to the world that they're serious about this new national security strategy, that the Americas is going to be their focus. And so that's one aspect of it that I think is important to note. And it's also a distraction from the fact that the economic policy, and in particular the tariffs, on Canada, on China, on Europe, on all the other countries, that hasn't gone as well as planned. The United States economy is grew only 2% last year compared to almost 3% the year before, and the outlook is for 2% again. So it could also be serving as a distraction from a slower economy and from a not yet successful tariff policy.
All right. So, I know it didn't take long for Daniel Smith, the Premier of Alberta, to come out. This happened today, earlier in the day, and simply saying, using this situation in Venezuela and the potential, problem that it may cause for Canada, to simply say, it's time we get this pipeline built. Obviously, there was that memorandum of understanding signed between the Prime Minister and the province, a couple of weeks ago. What do you think happens here? I mean, I keep hearing, and again, the expertise here suggests that, the U.S. getting involved in Venezuela, it's not a light switch. They're not going to go in today and then suddenly they'll be pumping out 100 billion, million barrels of oil in a year. This will take a long, long time to do, and therefore Canada should not be that concerned. Is that fair?
I think in the short to medium term, that's very fair. If you think about Canada, the evolution of Canada's oil production, at the turn of the century, we were doing 2 million barrels a day. Now we're doing total production oil sands in the entire country, almost 6 million barrels a day. So we've been able to increase it almost 3 times, but that took 25 years in a country where there's little to no corruption, where there's clear regulatory frameworks, you've got federal and provincial government oversight. And so that's in a country where it's easy to do business. And where we're investing in the infrastructure, tens of billions of dollars, and where we have big international, American and international oil companies and Canadian ones operating in a safe environment where not everyone's taking a cut. Really, it's pretty corruption-free. And so you compare that to Venezuela with 20 years of severe underinvestment in the infrastructure overall, and particularly in oil infrastructure, plus all of the people that were on the take And then it's going to take at least a decade to get the infrastructure, 5 to 10 years to get the infrastructure in place to ramp up production.
Right. So where do we go from here? I mean, the other concern, of course, is that if they were able to do this to Venezuela, and yes, they have the largest oil reserves in the world, maybe there's interest in doing this to other Latin American countries. Is that a concern?
I mean, if the country that should be most concerned about the next step, I think, is Cuba. Because, again, the Trump White House has signaled quite strongly in no uncertain terms that this is the Americas, or this is our backyard, and we're starting to assert ourselves. Now, the way they've asserted themselves, right now, the only thing that's changed is that the leader is out. Maduro's in New York in prison, and the head of the honor guard has been fired by the interim president. But still, it's a dramatic action, and I'm not sure if they really need to go after other countries in South America with oil. I think the signal's been sent, and perhaps there's going to be arrangements with U.S. oil companies. We'll have to wait to see, but they don't totally control the country yet. This is just we're in the first half of the first inning, and we don't know how this is going to unfold.
Kind of wonder, though. I want to play. This is Mark Carney, who was asked about this whole situation with Venezuela and oil, right? Mark Carney?
Yeah.
What he said today.
I'll say a couple of things. One is that, from our perspective, the removal of an illegitimate, corrupt, repressive government or leader, Maduro, is welcome news. It creates the possibility for democratic transition in Venezuela. We very much support that. We're available to support that, and we urge that to happen in a peaceful transition. And that's the best prospect for greater prosperity for the Venezuelan people and to respect the will of the Venezuelan people. Now, a functioning, not corrupt Venezuelan economy will produce more oil. It'll be better for the Venezuelan people. It'll be more stable for the Western Hemisphere. That's all a good thing. Canadian oil, Canadian energy, it's been our view, and we're working towards this, that Canadian oil will be competitive because it is low risk, clearly low risk, low cost, the marginal costs. There's been huge progress in getting down the costs. And low carbon, which is what the Pathways project, carbon capture, will bring. And that makes Canadian oil competitive for the medium and long term. So we welcome the prospect of peace, peaceful transition, democratic Venezuela. We welcome the prospect of greater prosperity in Venezuela. But we also see the competitiveness of Canadian oil. And we're investing, or we're putting in place measures so that that's going to happen. And in that context, a pipeline and exports to Asia. We've got competitive product, and we've been diversifying our markets, and that's one of the reasons why we signed the comprehensive MOU with Alberta.
So he doesn't seem all that concerned, but of course that's his job. He doesn't want to panic anyone. Are you buying what he's selling?
Well, the part that I don't think there's any immediate concern, Aaron, because again, it's going to take years and tens of billions of dollars of investment to get Venezuela's oil infrastructure anywhere close to ramping up production to where it used to be at the turn of the century, which was 3.5 million barrels a day. And while our oil is not low cost, it is low risk. It's no risk, actually. So that part is true. And we could build a pipeline to the West Coast in the time it takes for Venezuela and for foreign oil companies, American presumably, to increase production there. So we have time.
Leave it at that. Julian, always appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for having me, Aaron.
You bet. Take good care. All right, we have time. Let's hope that's in fact the case.
The biggest songs in the world. You've heard them countless times. Now, learn the details of how they came to be. Join Ruby Carr for Encore, the stories behind the songs you love. New interviews and newly unearthed archive footage make for a fascinating weekly deep dive. Stream Encore, the stories behind the songs you love on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.